The journey of the 10 brothers to Egypt begins 40 years before a great famine grips the land of Canaan. It is then that their father, Jacob, wanders the hill country of northern Mesopotamia in search of a wife. Jacob goes to the home of his uncle, Laban, who has 2 eligible daughters. Bewitched by the beauty of Rachel, younger of the 2, he asks for her hand in marriage. In exchange for his consent, Laban demands that Jacob work for him for the next 7 years. On the wedding night, the bride is brought to Jacob's tent, her face hidden behind a veil. But next morning, Jacob is shocked to discover that it is not Rachel who is in his bed, but her sister, Leah.
The story with the uncle Laban, the mean father-in-law, is almost humorous, but he does not want Jacob to marry the young, pretty daughter. He wants the oldest daughter to be married first, and so he pulls a little switch, and again we sort of chuckle at how that might have happened.
Tricked into wedlock with the wrong woman, Jacob relents to working 7 more years to win the hand of the woman he really loves. In this region of the ancient Near East, it is not unusual for a man to have more than one wife.
So here you have Jacob married to 2 women, 2 sisters, and clearly he only wanted to marry one, Rachel. As it turns out, Leah is very productive. I call her Fertile Myrtle. Every time you turn around, she was pregnant. She had children and children, but Rachel did not have children. And then when she finally does, that firstborn is Joseph.
The woman for whom Jacob had labored for 14 years finally conceives a son.
For Jacob, it must have been that much more rewarding as it was for Rachel to have a child after so much pain and anguish and hope. And there is a sense in which there's a build-up that is inside of Rachel all this time. It's as if you were gestating not a normal child, but a heroic child, and that's why it took so long for Joseph finally to make his appearance in the world.
And so it was that of all his sons, from the very moment of birth, Joseph would become Jacob's favorite.
I think that the relationship between Joseph and his brothers draws on the realities of family conflict. I mean, how does it feel to be the sons of the wife that father really didn't love as much?
The truth is that parents do favor children. They say they don't, but they can't help it. There are some children who are just more in line with what you hope for, what you believe, and as much as you try as a parent not to, sometimes things sneak through.
From the moment that Joseph makes his appearance in the world, there is something about him that destines him for greatness. The problem is that he seems to know that too.
Now Jacob loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him. Genesis 37:4.
Many of the details of the Joseph story can be illustrated by history and archaeology. For instance, you have the coat of many colors, which is a striking reference. As a matter of fact, we have an Egyptian wall painting from Beni Hassan, dated about 1900 BCE, which shows a party of 37 Asiatics coming down into the Egyptian delta. It calls them Asiatics, and so we know who they are. They're from somewhere in Canaan or Palestine, and many of them wear long garments, multicolored garments that sound very much like the biblical reference.
Attractive as the rainbow-colored coat was, it may have sparked enmity between Joseph and his brothers.
It was showing favoritism, it was elevating Joseph's status, and as the younger one in a patrilineal society, this of course was taboo, that the younger one should somehow be elevated to a position of supremacy over older ones.
According to the custom of many ancient societies, it is the oldest son who inherits his father's name, title, and property. But Jacob breaks with tradition.
The presentation of this very special garment to his young son Joseph, I think, gives us some interesting parts of the story. For one thing, Jacob seems totally oblivious to the fact that he's pouring gas on the fire in terms of the relationship between his many sons.
Then, as now, sibling rivalry plagued certain families, and Joseph was to ignite even deeper feelings of hostility within his brothers.
And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told his brethren, "Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose. And behold, your sheaf stood round about, and bowed down to my sheaf." Genesis 37:7.
If his first dream were not enough to enrage his brothers, Joseph dreams another, in which the stars represent his brothers and the sun and moon his parents. All bow humbly before him.
I think we'd have to say that Joseph doesn't seem to be relishing his role. He seems to be almost oblivious to the fact that what he's saying is enraging his brothers. He seems to be sort of just simply enjoying his awareness that his destiny appears to him to be for greatness.
Modern-day psychologists are fascinated by the possibility that dreams may be able to open a door to the unconscious. In ancient times, too, it was an intriguing topic.
The science of interpreting dreams was very important in the ancient world. We have dream books from Egypt and from Mesopotamia that would do the heart of Freud good.
Did Joseph's dreams merely reflect his superior attitude, or were they perhaps foretelling his bitter future relationship with his brothers?
Frankly, after a while, we begin to identify with the brothers saying, "Joseph, would you just shut up?" I mean, there's a sense in which we get sick of him as well, and yet the fact of the matter is, Joseph had a line on his own destiny. He was aware of something special happening in his life.
One day, when Joseph's brothers are pasturing their flocks in a fertile valley about 60 miles away from their home, Jacob sends Joseph to find them.
And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. Genesis 37:19.
The brothers decide to murder Joseph, and then to tell their father that he has been devoured by a wild beast. But Reuben, reluctant to shed the blood of his own brother, suggests they merely strip Joseph of his clothes and cast him into a deep pit.
I think being thrown into the pit was the great moment of betrayal. In some ways, being thrown into the pit is not about Joseph, it's about his brothers. It shows us their character, all of them, including those who in some ways made half-hearted attempts to save him. I think what it tells you is that in times ancient and modern, jealousy makes people cruel.
Cast into the pit, Joseph is alone and ponders his uncertain destiny.